And I'll welcome you all to today's series, AI speaker series on AI as career coach, hosted by Dan Rickert. Dan is a faculty member in our business and service careers department, and he is an IT instructor. And so, he's on probably a little bit more on the front edge than some of us in relation to AI, and was really curious on how we could be using AI to support the work that we do here, to, guide our students and advise our students around their next paths, right? So I'm going to turn it over to Dan, and thank you all for being on the call. And as far as questions go, I'm sure Dan's happy to answer questions as we go, but you can also put them in the chat and we'll monitor that as well. Dan, take it away.
All right, let's see if the screen is sharing. Kind of looks like it is. Thank you,
Yes.
Sarah. Thank you. Appreciate the introduction. Appreciate everybody who showed up here. Just a little bit about me. I saw a couple names out there, folks that haven't met me yet. Yes, I work in the IT department and I'm an IT instructor. Let's see. I know very little about career coaching. I'm hoping that some of you have actually showed up to this meeting because you're actually interested in career coaching. Maybe it's part of your job. But I find myself as a student advisor actually doing some fair amount of career coaching as well. And I find that very satisfying. I like the relationships with the students and I feel like I'm making a difference. So this one kind of popped into my head. How can I up my game maybe a little bit with, maybe some of these AI tools? So that's what I was doing. I wanted to investigate this. Let's see if I can authorize it. Here's what we're going to look at today. Before we can figure out if AI can actually work as a career coach, we actually have to define what it is that a career coach does roughly. And then we will we'll answer the question in the context of that investigation as to will AI replace the human career coaches? Not today. I'm sorry, spoiler alert, but that's probably not going to happen. But you never say never when it comes to AI. Things are what they are. We're going to quickly look, can't do too deep of a dive, but we'd like to quickly look at some of the AI assisted career coaching platforms that exist right now. They're basically commercial platforms, and I'll discuss that a bit. And then we're going to perform some of those primary functions within those career coach functions within some of the AIs that we have access to, like the chat GPTs, Gemini, and Copilot. And then the last thing is, while we're actually doing that, there's going to be some interesting phenomenon, I guess, for lack of a better word, that we will find out that there are some marked differences between chat GPTs and Gemini and Copilot. And I hope to illuminate that today. I'm a geek, so I have to be interested in that for sure. But next one here. So in order to figure out what a career coach does, you have to enter the prompt into the chat, into the GPT, and I did it for, and by the way, at the beginning of this, I'm not going to enter them all in the interest of time. And toward the end of this presentation, I'll do a few of them to demonstrate what we're doing. But I did ask ChatGPT to list the functions that a career coach would do. And I went through all the different platforms, and they largely came up with the same criteria. We'll look at that on the next screen as far as what a career coach does. But just an interesting phenomenon, as I said, ChatGPT, and I use both versions, I actually pay for the 4.0, which is a little bit about that in case someone doesn't know. 4.0 is the paid version. It has current data right up to the minute, or up to the day at least. It doesn't time out or give you just a set number of prompts, whereas 3.5, it goes back to September 2021. It doesn't know who won the Super Bowl. Not that that's major importance, but you have some limitations, obviously, especially if you're doing some kind of job searching. So last comment on that, I use ChatGPT frequently, and I will rerun my prompt, and maybe many of you do that as well, because subsequent prompts will give actually some different results. So sometimes you'll see something, if you're brainstorming, as we kind of are, a function that we didn't see in a previous prompt. Now compare and contrast that to Gemini and Copilot. When I ran that prompt above that says list the functions of a career coach, it gave me adequate output. But what it also did is repeat the same exact answer word for word when I reran that. And I wasn't aware of that. Maybe some of you already knew that, but I found that kind of interesting. So that has applications beyond just anything in the current topic. And let's see. So having run that, by the way, does everybody see the whole thing? It looks like it might be cut off on the bottom.
We're we're seeing professional development.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing too. Okay, perhaps that's it. I don't know. It just looks like it might be cop. So when I ran that, these are the things that came up. And there's a lot of different things that are on here that we don't have the time, and it's probably not even appropriate at this point to say that ChatGPT could address that. Confidence building, I don't know if it may be a great job or attaboy from a chat GPT is going to actually help me to feel more confident, just saying. So we're going to actually look at some of the items that are in highlighted today, the assisting with a job search, a skill assessment, which, matching your skills and your interests to a particular career. And then we're going to look at how ChatGPT can do a cover letter and resume evaluation, make some suggestions for improvements. So let's move on, and we'll start with the job search. And again, I'm not entering these in, but I'm giving you the results of what basically happened with the job search. So when I do a job search, I want to know what jobs. And I thought, hey, maybe this could actually save me some time. And I could say, provide me a list of jobs that are currently available in Hendersonville, North Carolina, desktop support jobs. And it came back and it basically did not give me that. It gave me a couple of recruiters. It gave me some information about the jobs. And in a conversational sense, I said, so, hey, you can't actually give me those open positions. And the result was I am unable to do so. And I thought about it for a minute, goes, well, are there specific legal reasons for that? And yes, there are specific guidelines and legal considerations. So it will not, in all the different platforms, will not show you actually live jobs. I'm really kind of surprised about that, in the sense that those job postings are public. So I was always under the assumption that if anything's public on the internet, that you could basically share that. So, but I'm not a lawyer, so who knows? So we can't actually look at the jobs. What's the next best thing? And the next best thing is, and everybody who's done a job search, that if you're going to a company site and you're trying to find where the job is located within their website, you could poke around, clicking, and probably take a minute or two, or perhaps longer, just trying to find that page. And so if it could give me a large list of pages where I could just click the link and go immediately to that page, I would see that as a time saver. So I tried to do that. And when I entered it, just find it interesting, Copilot, when I actually entered the prompt above, the first one says, can you provide me with the open jobs webpage for the top 10 tech company websites? I also did that for Hendersonville, a surrounding region. Copilot came back and just gave me job boards. That's great. It's not what I asked for. And then I said, can you provide me with the open jobs webpage for the top 10 tech companies? I don't want job boards or recruiters. I want actual companies like Google and Apple. Interestingly enough, Copilot came back and only gave me Google and Apple. So I'm going to make a wild guess here, but my guess is that because Microsoft, which runs Copilot, as well as Google, which has Gemini, their AI product, that because they're also in the business of running search engines, and they are monetized, and they basically, they don't want to necessarily put the competition out there and promote the competition, that it wasn't giving me what I wanted. I'm guessing that Indeed and Dice and Glassdoor at the top are probably paying some of those search engines for every view, but I don't know, just guessing. So finally, I asked, give me 10. Whoop, moving around here. Actually, that got cut off. So I said, give me the 10 answers to the question, but I'm sorry, it got cut off. But that's what I asked for. And Copilot came back and it finally apologized, and it actually gave me what I asked for initially. So kind of being long-winded here on this, but at the end of the day, I just want to mention that ChatGPT was quite effective. I asked that initial prompt and it gave me exactly what I asked for, no more, no less. And when it did it right away. So I was impressed. We're already, ChatGPT is kind of out front for me as far as a favorite tool versus the other two. So moving along, we're going to move to a different area for job searching. We're actually going to look at some of the platforms. Some of you are potentially, my understanding is working right now with career coaching, and you would probably be familiar with this tool. I was not. Sarah kind of gave me some information about it. And I was wondering whether the ones that we're already using here at the college actually employs any type of AI technology. So I got in touch with Jason Chappell, And I also get on the website, and I did not see any evidence of that. I also did not see any evidence, or Jason did said he hasn't seen anything that would look like AI is in use for this package. If any of you know differently, I would appreciate you letting me know. But as I went through the website and looked at the features, it appeared quite powerful. I was impressed with the package, but at the same time, AI did not appear to be in the list. So as we look for other commercial versions of those packages that were AI generated this list. And by the way, I've also supplemented this list with a couple things that I actually use search engines for, because AI did such a poor job, all of them, in finding some commercial packages that you could investigate for the purposes of using it as a career coach. And some of the commonalities here are the fact that nobody wants to give a price. And I guess I'm not surprised if you look at number 10, if that's kind of the market rate. Yeah, they're targeting some companies and people that are beyond my price range if I'm looking for a career coach, that's for sure. I'll also say that the types of features or the sophistication of each of these packages varies widely. I believe that the search and the results, the prompt or the query from the website or from Google would give you any of the websites that mentioned AI. It's a career site and we use AI. Well, that's all really well and good, but some of them were rather short. They would only use AI to match human career coaches to you based on some questionnaire. It's not really, that's not all that useful to me, or at least it's not. It would imply that there's a great deal of AI. We use AI. Well, that's kind of like a dating site and no more. Whereas there were some other sites that appear to be fully AI and automated. So that's kind of interesting. And then there was everything in between. So again, some commonalities of what all of those sites would show if you clicked on them and looked around. So they'll do resume and LinkedIn reviews, job search strategies, and then performance management through some metrics. So we're actually looking at, and I'm sure this is not a shock to you, but in the career coaching realm, there's pre-career. In other words, you're looking for the work, and then once you're employed, you're actually looking to improve your game, up your game some as far as what you're doing. So a couple examples. This was a site that's on the list here, and it says, meet our coaches. Those are obviously human beings. So if you start digging around the site, there's very little AI implemented here. They will use AI just to match you with the appropriate individual. So I wouldn't find that very useful. On the flip side, and if hopefully you can see this on the right-hand side, but this is actually a GPT dialogue that's going on, and I'm kind of impressed. I'll take a moment here, let you look at that. He's actually asking for some advice for the job. And if that's career counseling, that's a little more in line with where I believe that this technology is headed. And I say it's headed in that direction because the information on the left side of the screen is actually inviting you to join their pilot program. I've also seen another site that was asking you if you were interested, you could sign up to get into their beta program, which basically means you're beta testing their software. So these are coming, but they're not there yet. But I do think this is useful, and they will continue to improve as they move along. So those are some of the platforms. Oh, this is maybe the last one here. This is actually an app. I installed it on my phone, and this morning I got up, and the first thing, it woke up and started asking me a 10-question questionnaire about, and it was honestly was a little bit lame. I don't know exactly what the purpose was, and when I was done, it gave me a small report, and then it went about its business. But there are obviously some things that in the career coach realm, I can see perhaps some of these things, success habits or whatever, it's going to pop up almost like my Fitbit app that says, hey, you've been sitting for 2 hours, you should probably get up and walk around. So maybe not that powerful, but at least, kind of pervasive and in your face quite a bit. So a lot of possibilities with the platforms. So moving along here, my perception of career coach and the things that I do, and perhaps a lot of you are in the same boat here with any coaching you may do on campus, or we're trying to match students' skills and interests with career options and educational pathways. And so first thing that comes to mind for me, because this has been around forever, I've been around forever too, apparently, is What Color's Your Parachute? I'm sure most, if not all of you are familiar with that book. And its main premise, the synopsis of this, which by the way, I also used a prompt to find this. And it's basically, it helps you to find a job that aligns with your skills and passions. Well, there we go. That's my perception. Another small interesting fact, when I asked Copilot, they did answer the question, which has actually been cut off at the top, but I also threw advertisements at me. So I'm kind of seeing a trend here with regards to Copilot as well as Gemini. And if they're only showing you certain things based on your prompt for the things that they're promoting, that they're monetizing in some way, can I really trust their response? Because they're omitting certain things and giving preference to other things for the basis of profit. So anyway, ask yourself that question. But when they say AI, it may hallucinate, but it also may just lie because of its inherent greed. Can I say AI is greedy? We'll go there. So anyway, here's where I actually get to do a prompt for a change here. And if you think about what an AI would look like, this is my perception, but I think this is from what I've seen. If the AI is going to do an interest inventory, they're basically going to ask you a series of questions, and they're going to compile that in some manner, find out what your preferences are, your personality types, whatever it is that they're evaluating in the assessment. And then they're going to try to match that to some possible careers. In the interest of time, because I've actually seen some of those online that are 50 or 100 questions, we don't have the time. So I'm just doing a test here of just 3 simple questions that one would find on a personal assessment. So at least we're on target with the subject matter. And when I first ran that, I didn't like the answer. That was the extent of my prompt, was this first line, because it just kind of asked 3 questions and it was done. It just kind of left it to me. And I says, well, obviously the end game here is to recommend career options. And I wanted to kind of customize some of the output a little bit and do some prompt engineering and help make it just more useful for me, especially in a report format. So I also added to the option to ask each question one at a time. So that helps me. It's like, give me another one, give me another one. And then after they are finished asking the last question, I've answered it, I want each question repeated back to me immediately, but I want each question to have my answer just below it. So it'd be question answer 1, question answer 2 in that format. And then at the end of that, from the bottom line, it says combine all of what you've learned in the questions before recommending these career options. And this should only occur as the last step. So hopefully everybody got that, but you'll see how this works. I'm going to switch over here to the chats, the GPTs.
Hey, Dan, I have a question.
Yes.
Because I think it might be fun.
Yeah.
I think you're about to post it into the chat, we're gonna do this. Do you mind also putting it in the Zoom chat so that we can grab that same prompt and save it for later for ourselves?
Sure. Let's
Okay.
see here. I believe I have it here. If I can find the chat, I'm blind. Chat. Good suggestion. I appreciate that. I can't see that. It's way too small. Did I succeed, or I got sorry, got the wrong thing there.
Yeah, I think
It did not copy it.
it didn't copy. I imagine you're gonna put it into your chat though, right? Like we're about to do it. So just when you put it in there, just throw it in both, maybe.
Let's see here. My apologies for that. There we go. So generate a list. Okay. So now that I'm there, like I said, I'm going to put it in the chat. Let's start with Copilot. And I'm going to, the format I'm looking for, the output. And by the way, this is at this point, just because I don't want to have to come up with all the answers and it's a little audience participation. As it works, it's going to ask those questions. If anybody wants to pipe in and give me some a short answer to the questions, that would be great. Maybe not right now, because the first thing it did, as you can tell, and skip the screen here. Cursor up, sorry. It did not do what I said. It just asked the questions and it was done. I really wanted it to be more interactive, ask a single question, let me answer, etc. So as far as I'm concerned, Copilot just did not manage that prompt very well. So actually, I'm not going to bother with Copilot. Let's move on to Gemini and see if Gemini is a little more able to follow those directions. That's a good sign. So we've got one question and it's waiting for my answer. 3 top values that you would like to prioritize in the ideal work environment. Anybody got an idea, or leave it to me? I'm happy to take
yourself off mute. This is
take
our
our stuff off mute and give me a try to keep
Service.
it brief. I'm not the fastest typist.
April said service.
Yeah.
Service. Okay, that's good. Anything else?
Teamwork.
I like that. I'm all about that. And
Fun.
fun.
Yeah, I like to have fun.
I love it. All right, so now it's great answers. It's given us some feedback. And where's my question number 2? Well, that was just kind of useless. It did that, and look what we got. It's like, yep, based on those 3 answers and the other 2 that I neglected to ask, it's already telling me what I can do for a living, which actually wasn't too far off, but but at the same time, it didn't do what I asked. So that didn't happen. Let's go to Chat GPT and see if this works. So let's paste it in. Drum roll. By the way, is this big enough? Can you see this?
Yeah, but I do see that you're in Chat GPT 4. Have you tried this in the
Oh.
free version as well?
Yeah, it's a good idea. I'm sorry. Let's
That's
try that. Yeah, so this is a little older, and so maybe it doesn't have quite the same intellect. If it works here, I'm going to assume that it's going to work in 4, which is a little smarter, for lack of a better way of putting it. What are your key strengths and skills? Anybody just yell one out, but I'm going to try to, in the interest of time. Let's see, communication. Anybody else? I like the teamwork. Team oriented. And smart. Okay. Good. We actually got to the second question for the first time, it looks like here. What types of tasks or activities you enjoy most in your current or past roles? You're going to think I'm crazy, but I'm going to put meetings because at least that's social. Actually, I don't mind meetings if everybody's, having a good time. Let's see what other activities would be useful in your work day. Anyone? Bueller?
Writing.
Writing. Thank you. And how about working on a project? That's not all that very descriptive, but at least it's got something going on. Last question, long-term career goals or aspirations. Making a difference.
Retire early.
It's funny you say that. I actually had that when I was testing this thing early. Retire early. Oop. And I also had this, which useful. All right. I know there's a little silly, but let's just see. Oh, look, it asked 3 questions in succession and it actually followed the instructions and repeated them back to me and then actually gave me some possibilities. So this particular GPT, and it's also 3.5, as Sarah pointed out, we would use that, was actually able to follow the instructions. I don't think the instructions were that vague or that mixed up that there would have been a problem. So it is possible that it could work. Let's see if I can go back now to my slides for a moment. Actually, I'm already there. It's right here. Okay, so that was the prompt that we just entered. So you could see where, at least if you were doing this outside of using some sort of a commercial product, and by the way, I did ask her, give me the Myers-Briggs inventory, and it obviously wasn't able to do that. But I think that it could probably do a pretty decent job of asking some questions, especially if you gave it a larger pool of questions that it would prompt for you. It might do, and again, I haven't not done 50 questions, I didn't have the time. But I'm going to say that it probably is going to do a pretty decent job of that.
Hey, Dan,
Yes, ma'am.
Kevin just noted in the chat, he's been using Claude, which is kind of known for being really good for higher ed. And in the chat, he noted that Claude also worked. Kevin, if you want to take yourself off mute and talk about if it worked like chat or if it did something different, that'd be great.
Yeah, you bet. I just took your prompt, Dan, because I've been comparing and contrasting these as well, and I've just had a lot of success with Claude since I've gotten a paid version of that, and it did, you know, exactly what you wanted. It did that. It repeated the questions and answers back to me. It gave me 5 recommendations, and apparently I'm supposed to be a pole dancer. That's great to hear.
Okay. Well, I don't even want to ask what things you typed in for your aspirations. So, but thank you for sharing that, Kevin. I appreciate that. Let's see, coming down to the end here, and this is actually something which is pretty common. If you've got any type of business writing or a letter, it can give you suggestions for improvement and whatnot. But just to go through the motions, it's pretty much the same thing. If I were to take this, I believe I can do this. Let's see. I'm going to have to actually, I'm sorry, this is not in my other document, so I'm going to do something slightly. Just so I can get it on my clipboard. Sorry about that. Let's go to Copilot and let's run that and see what we got. So this is basically a letter that I pulled off the internet for a student looking for an internship. And it's going to prompt at the top. It says, assuming the role of career coach, please critique this cover letter. Which is definitely the role of a career coach, like someone down in NC Works and whatnot. I've actually had some people critique some of the stuff that I've had even before I started working here, and I was impressed with their skills and abilities.
And just a quick note, Dan, we do have until 3, so we're good. We're good on time.
Okay, well, very good. Let's see. I found that Copilot has this knack of like putting a whole lot of Blake lines once it's completed with its prompt. Okay, so just real quick, I'm not going to read the whole thing or whatever, but I'm kind of looking it over here. Introduction paragraph, is it giving good advice? Introducing herself and mentioning herself. She highlights a 16-year residency. That's all good. Body paragraph, she's doing things, but the constructive feedback, this is actually where you start to get a little more critical and find out how you can improve it. Considering specific examples, providing specific examples of how her skills and experience align with internship requirements. That's good. I like the second one actually too. Chloe could customize her cover letter to the Downtown Association, mentioning specific aspects of their work that would demonstrate genuine interest, which obviously demonstrates that she's done some research. And employers are always interested. Yes, you took the time to find out who we are and what we're all about. So without being too exhaustive on this, I feel that that output was fairly useful.
Hey, Dan, before you go on, scroll
Sure.
down. I just saw something weird at the bottom there. Look at that. It's given us a revised.
Oh, it
quote.
did give me a revision. Yeah, I'm sorry I missed
Yeah.
that. I've run this query on a number of times, and sometimes it's actually given me things like that, Sarah, and sometimes it's actually rewritten the whole letter. I think we saw that yesterday. I don't know which chat it was, which of these particular, but it doesn't seem to do that all the time.
But, and if we go back up to your prompt, do you ask for it to actually give
No,
revision?
I do not.
Oh,
So assuming the role, yeah, so if it's going to give you some additional information that it just feels that you might need, and that is useful, in fact, then that's a nice thing for it to do. It's learning. And I don't think Copilot did this yesterday. I haven't been impressed, you can probably tell, with Copilot. Although I will continue to use it because I like the fact that I get 3 different products and they all give something slightly different. So let's see, if I do this in Gemini, I'm going to run that same letter, same prompt. Let's see what it has to say. Jumped right into areas of improvement. It was a little less verbose, which is not necessarily a bad thing. very similar answers here. If folks are reading this, instead of just mentioning the coursework, mention your specific achievements. Yeah, so I don't know what your take on this here, but ultimately some of the stuff that they're suggesting are good. By the way, a little different format here, it looks like, but it's actually suggesting changes for the wording.
Mhm.
So it's really kind of doing the same thing as what you just pointed out on the last example, but it's doing so in a little different format. I don't know that, no, it doesn't have any kind of letter, a completely revised letter at the end, but it is actually doing some of the rewriting. I like that. I sometimes slave over my emails more than I should, and I should just probably, if they're going to be halfway sophisticated, I should probably pop it into an AI and let it clean up what I've got. Let's see, we're going to continue to use 3.5 just because it is the lesser of the two. And it's because frankly, I haven't seen too much difference other than some of the features that I mentioned early on about currency of the data. So let's see. Here it goes. Here are a few areas where you could strengthen things. And yes, so what it did here was in fact making some critiquing. Here's a revised version incorporating the suggestions. Look, okay, so this one in fact did. By the way, I did this earlier today. I was running through this presentation and I typed that very chat or that very prompt and the letter into this chat, and I did not get a revised letter. So once again, ChatGPT, even the 3.540 as well, running a successive prompt, the same prompt, you're going to get different results. And so in this case, I did in fact see this letter, which I think is kind of interesting. And probably don't have time to go through and compare it word for word, but when I did that earlier, I kind of did take a paragraph and make a comparison, and I definitely saw a marked improvement in what was going on. So let's see if I can get back to my letter, my slides here. We're just about done here. I know it looks like we've got a lot of extra time, but view slideshow. So what have we done here today? Well, obviously, if we look back, we first had to define some of those functions that a career coach would do while they're in the context of their work. And I hopefully, to some degree, have illuminated you that AI is nowhere near replacing human career coaches yet. It's just not there. Even whether they're the packages, again, we didn't go too far into the actual packages or the platforms that are available online. They're very expensive and they're really not. It's just in the infancy at this point, I think, in the whole industry. So we did perform some functions that we just got through, and we saw some rather remarkable differences. Some were not too different, but some were very different in terms of the output that those different platforms would do. By the way, Kevin, real quick, if you could take yourself off mute, what was I was not aware of that other package that you said that you put that query into. What is that called again?
Yeah, it's Claude through Anthropic. One of the leaders of sort of the AI movement had broken off and had gotten a huge bunch of funding for this. And I just listened to an interview with this guy last week on Ezra Klein, and it's really right now, arguably it is, the next step of better for a lot of the interactions. But you know how that is too, because you've played with it so much, Dan, that sometimes, something that isn't necessarily great at one thing is actually very good at something else. And it's like, for instance, Claude doesn't do graphic output. So what I do is I'm using it. I use it a fair amount for different purposes, but I was having it summarize some year-long data samples, and I just imported a whole bunch of stuff in. I said, okay, organize this, summarize it, and then I need 4 graphs showing it. And it did everything, but it couldn't give me the 4 graphs, which I then copied and pasted into ChatGPT, and then it gave me graphs. So I think one of your points is that these aren't necessarily any one of them is good at everything yet. And by the way, I was teasing about what it told me to do, but it told me I could be a freelance writer, research scientist, software developer, graphic designer, or consultant. And I thought, yes, good job.
So you're telling me pole dancer was not one of them?
Yeah. Well, sadly, that's my secret career choice.
Okay. All All right, well, thanks for sharing that. I wrote that down. I will investigate that as well. There's a lot to know here, as far as, you know, what these tools can do. And like I said, because this wasn't actually a part of the, or what I found interesting is the things that weren't necessarily a part of the career coaching, is just the differences between the different GPT products. And you just pointed that out as well, Kevin. I actually had no idea. I didn't know that I was actually going to discover that in the context of this investigation I was doing. So.
Yeah, and Dan, if I may ask, in your research, have you noticed this? And I've listened to a few different interviews and whatnot with some of these folks who are saying what's interesting is sometimes because it is probabilistic, the stuff it generates is more art than science, and and that's why it gets things wrong. And rather than hallucination, one of these authors said confabulation is the right term, because when you confabulate, that's a term to indicate that you cannot tell truth from fiction, and you mix them, and that's what these tend to do. Anyways, have you found the problem with counting? Because I put in like a class list, and I said, okay, I need 4 groups that are mixed blah 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 ways to put in groups later, and it did it, and then 2 of the students were missing. I said, I gave you 22 students. Why do I only see 20? Here's, oh, sorry. Have you seen any of that kind of just bad judgment that these things sometimes demonstrate?
In a mathematical sense?
Yeah, I mean, every time I ask it to count, it really struggles counting. You give it, you put in something that's 300 words, and you look at Microsoft, and in the corner it says it's 300 words, it's X numbers characters and all that. You put it into any one of these, and you ask it to count how many words, and some of them are just utterly incapable of doing that. It's just sort of funny to me.
Did we actually just possibly see some of that today in one of those prompts that we ran, where I asked for 3 questions and I got 2?
Yeah,
Right.
you're exactly
And-
right. Yeah, that's a good example.
And I don't know if that's entirely the same phenomenon or not, but it's that. I've also asked it in the past to give me a list of 10 items, 50 questions or whatever. I did that years ago, the 50 questions and the assessment, just to kind of look at the questions and see the quality. And it got 50. So there are different things that it can do. I completely maybe related, but not related. I've noticed that if you're actually creating an image and the image contains words, there's often misspellings in those words.
Yeah. It interprets letters as this artistic symbol set, like it's an alien who doesn't understand that we use vision, and we have character sets that are known to mankind, and it doesn't. It's the same reason it's so bad at fingers and faces,
Right.
because we are experts in fingers and faces, but to a mathematical representation, it doesn't know any of those things. I'm sure my dog feels that way. When we go outside, he says, "You can't tell the other dogs that have been here? You're so stupid." But just, I have different senses, Gatsby.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I've noticed that. I brought that up in some of the demonstrations and presentations I've made around the county here.
Yeah.
He shows a group of senior citizens, hey, look at that hand. It's really kind of got 9 fingers on it, and it's
Yeah.
all deformed.
Yeah.
Yeah, AI is not totally there yet. Maybe that's a good thing.
It's getting better. Let's take some time. We do have a little bit of time. I want to open it up and just see what questions we may have from others in the group. Especially again, if you're thinking about using this as a career coach supplement, right? Like in your advising sessions or as you're meeting with students, what's this got you thinking about?
I think it's just giving me a jumping off point to start playing around with this kind of stuff and putting in, prompts like Dan put in, and just seeing how it works. I play with AI every day, and I am definitely a lot better with my prompts and getting it to do what I want it to do. Except, spell correctly when I'm doing pictures.
Yeah. Well, you bring up a really good point, Rob, that, we really do just need to spend more time using it, right? Either personally or like in that light professional space, so that we can get more confident and skilled at it, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, Robin, if I may, another thing, if you want to play with Claude, and there again, I'm not marketing it, I'm not getting paid for this. But it has one of its features it now will do is I took like an image of the school calendar, with that one that has all the little subsets and different colors and stuff. And I popped it in there, and then I asked it some questions about making me a calendar, and it got it 100% correct in terms of scanning it. It'll also, and I don't know, my handwriting is like not even a discursive symbol set, it's more representational. So it's hard for anything to get it, but it'll also take handwritten notes and convert it. And then I had like a year's worth of notes that I needed to convert into something that was a little less cryptic. And sure enough, it generated and you can put in huge amounts of data, and it went through all of those cryptic notes and extrapolated what I meant. And it was about, I would say it was at 95% right. So so just when you're playing with it, especially for the handwriting stuff, it's got a feature for that. You put it in and say, hey, what did I say here? And it might be able to interpret it correctly if your handwriting, I guess, is above a third grader's, which mine is not.
So Claude can do that, Kevin, as far as uploading.
Yeah. So
Yeah, so-
it's really good at scanning images, scanning text, and doing character generated stuff, and then applying logic to that. So, it's not coming up with grotesque errors. But yeah, so that is another feature that it has that surprised me that, I was using actually quite a bit, because real often I'll grab something in Camtasia and I'll, have it render text if I'm cutting and pasting from an image because I type so poorly. And now I don't have to do that step. I just upload the actual
Right.
image, and it'll do that, and I can work with it that way. Yeah, sure will.
Yeah, not all of the GPTs will allow you to upload. So,
Well, and we'll point out Kevin is using a paid version of Claude. I'm gonna sign up for the free version because I'm already paying for a couple other ones. So I'll be trying that out and playing around with it some more too.
Yeah, and it even the paid version though, Dan, since you're comparing these, the paid version of Claude still has a limit of how many interactions you can have. However, you can do so much at a time that if you have like 10 question sets that you want to do, or have it do troubleshooting for you, if you set up all 10 of those questions in a single entry, it will give you like reams of responses. But if you're just doing the quick back and forth, which is my tendency with these things,
right.
it runs out after about 20 questions, and it
Okay.
says, hey, you got to wait till 1 o'clock.
Well, I haven't encountered that with ChatGPT. If I'm doing live demos out in the community or something like that, I can't afford to have it say, sorry, we can't do that. So definitely have to have a paid version. I haven't run into that at all with 4.0. So.
And then also, I don't know, does anyone else here use this? Dan, do you tend to use it for test making? Because the LMS will take Aiken format. And then I know that Tom Hefner is recreating a whole bunch of this stuff. And he's actually not only having to recreate it, but make it in Spanish. So I found that this tool is pretty good about that. And if the LMS sometimes won't accept Aiken format unless it's a certain way, whatever that means. And I'd say, hey, I need it like this. And it's really good at that. And it also, if you have the question set up with the correct answer, you can say, add 3 distractors, and you can even say, how close it should be the correct answer. And then of course one has to go back through and read these because, at intervals, these, as you pointed out, at intervals, they're just crazy. But anyways, that stuff for the LMS I found valuable too. Have you bumped into any of that
I
kind of?
have not actually even considered that, but now that you bring it up, that's the whole point, is that we never think about actually, we say, hey, let's try that. So it's good that we have these forums, because I think we start to kind of mix up our ideas a little bit, and everybody, kind of cross pollinates with things that are going on. I started by saying I'm not an expert by any means in the career coaching category. And frankly, I'm still kind of a novice on the AI side. I probably know more than a lot, but at the same time, there's so many possibilities.
I just found it was very helpful. And my daughter was actually just offered a gig that she's going to probably accept Friday. And between now and then, I'm going to try to help her craft a series of questions to ask them before she accepts. And showing this to me really just taught me, hey, that's right. I could ask one of these gadgets to help generate those questions. So I really think that was very helpful today, Dan. It really helped me.
Well, something that came to mind here, just before I forget it, in the process of actually putting this presentation together, I'm thinking about maybe like a next step. If we could actually come up with a certain number of good prompts, almost like a prompt dictionary or encyclopedia, that one could actually basically make publicly available, possibly to students, and say, here, why don't you take this and see what what you can do. Maybe run it as a program and just have the student have the conversation with the GPT and find out who they are, what they're about. We can't all just learn how to do all these prompts individually. I mean, I think some of us have an innate curiosity to how it works, but some people just want to get to the end. Just let me do my job. Ask me the questions and tell me what I need to do. So I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but like a composite, one big prompt, maybe. I don't know. Something that could be useful in that capacity.
And I know that some folks are using chat platforms to ask the chat platform to generate a prompt. Like you can ask chat, like, what's the best way to prompt for this? And it will even coach you on that, right?
I've done that. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I want to just put out another call. Are there other questions or thoughts that are coming up for other folks on the call about how we could be using this in relation to career coaching or advising?
I used it recently for a field trip. It was in 8th grade. It was Transylvania County Schools, and we had a panel of students, and we had a moderator, Ben Hardy, and well, he didn't use it. This was actually before it was Will King, and we developed a list of questions. I mean, much like what you were doing, Dan, for the 8th graders, and I feel myself that when I'm writing these prompts, I go back to thinking like when I'm writing in BASIC, when I was a little kid, like 10, 20, 30, and just logically spell it out. And I put the prompt in, and it was just amazing. I mean, it was like 20 questions. They were dead on. They even had kind of follow-up questions below. And I could see that using that as an advising tool for sure. I'm going to definitely play around with that and see, because we can't think of everything, and sometimes it'll pull something and I'll be like, oh yeah, I should do that. I should ask that question.
Interesting.
Yeah, I like the idea of, I think we're all still trying to come to terms with how it's going to support us or assist us in our critical roles. And there are parts of everybody's job where it's not, like Kevin uses this word sometimes, like that part isn't precious to us, right? Like I've done that 50 times. I don't need to come up with questions again, right? So maybe those are the kinds of roles that we're comfortable offloading to AI, but sitting with the student is not, right? Like we still want to have that face-to-face interaction with the student. What is it that I can have AI help me with so that I have time to sit with the student? Because it's really about creating efficiencies that allow us to do the parts of our job that we're really the best at and that are the most important, right? Any other thoughts or questions before we wrap up today? I want to make sure we have time to check in with Dan and utilize his experience as he prepped for this session and has been thinking about and using AI.
Well, I hope it's been useful in some capacity, at least to kind of launch you into thinking about all of you who are working in this capacity, coaching students. I think we all fall into that category at some point, like I said, in student advising. So if it's a starting off point for maybe expanding what this tool can do, then I would have achieved my goal.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. I'm going to stop recording.